Right, yeah. Welcome to the Aro Benaiah Show. Today I'm joined by Lindsay Sutherland, business consultant, speaker, and entrepreneur, helping business owners build freedom businesses that support time, money, purpose, and peace. From living six-figure corporate career to building a life of freedom in a log cabin in Idaho. Lindsay now coaches entrepreneurs to work smarter, streamline their operations, and build business academy that creates real legacy. Lindsay, it's really a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure too. I'm excited.
Yeah, thank you. So, what was it like growing up?
Well, my dad was a service provider. He was a flooring contractor. He got his start after the Navy. He was in the Navy for the US and really worked his business. I was the daughter. I was on the job sites doing tear outs,
Oh,
and then later, I noticed one thing interesting later on in life when you look back. I saw how our lives as children and as the family really it really depended on dad's business. He was either stressed out because he had too much work, or he was stressed out because he didn't have enough work. It was like one of the two. The best times to hang out with my dad was on vacation when he couldn't think about work.
well,
And then, unfortunately, in 1994, my mom passed away and she was his secretary. So they had kind of built the business up together. And I always just look back and think, because I was 12 at the time, what an amazing man to keep his business going, to provide for us as young girls. And we had a really blessed life. I was really grateful for that. But it had to be so hard, already running a business, just you and your wife, and then to have to do it
yeah,
alone. My heart always went out to him. And he actually passed away before he got to retire. Now, I'm not trying to bring everybody down saying that.
yeah,
I'm not trying to be, but it's so important because it was the catalyst for what I do. Because I don't want other people to go through that, where I want them to have that family life that they built their business to provide. And that's truly what's close to my heart.
wow, wow, amazing, amazing. It's really a robust story. It's been that growing up. Our daddy was more of a handyman, and the fact that you get to work with him some couples of time. So this period you work with him on site, and what does this earlier experience teach you about entrepreneurship? Working with your dad and seeing him do things.
You don't know it, do you? When you're a young person and you're watching your
Yeah,
adult leader do it, you're not really thinking, oh, I'm going to grow up and be an entrepreneur. But when you see somebody make a way and not conform to the world of having a regular job,
yeah,
when you finally launch into the world, it changes your perspective because you know what's possible. And I think that I spent 20 years working in the automotive industry
Mhm.
in a regular job, and I was desperate for that freedom. And I'll tell you when I got a taste of that freedom truly. So when dad died, it was 2013. My little sister actually was working with him at that point, and we had a choice. We could sell the business or just dissolve it because it was just him, or we could take it over. And I was burnt out on the car business at that point, as usual. And I told my sister, I said, let's do this. Let's do dad's business. And I knew marketing, I knew business, I knew customer relations. She knew how to measure and project manage. And so we were a really good fit. And we ran his company for that year after he died. I mean, we did in 90 days, we did as much revenue as he had done the year before, the whole year
Oh,
before. Yeah,
oh,
we were hustling it. But what ended up happening, because a lot of people are probably wondering, like, why didn't you keep with it? Well, my sister ended up getting pregnant, and then her husband was in the military and he got deployed. It was just a perfect storm of weird circumstances, and we couldn't keep going. But that wasn't the point. It was that during that year, I felt so happy. I loved going around on job sites. I loved networking. I loved meeting with people. And I'm like, man, I'm happier making less money than I made in the car business. It didn't matter. It was the freedom. I just wanted the freedom to be myself. I could dress the way I wanted to dress. I didn't have to put out everybody else's fires. I was in control. I wanted to work with something or
Yeah.
control a situation, I could do it. I was just like, man. And that's when it really, I think that entrepreneur fire really took a spark inside of me. It was still a few more years before it really took its hold, but it was lit at that time, let's say.
Wow, wow. Amazing, amazing. I think it's the fact that being that you already burn out or working in auto industries and it's quite demanding being that you're still an employee in that particular firm and having to manage that business and discover that there's a whole lot of joy and happiness that come with freedom. And the fact that you can order things around at your own, yeah, at your own time, even if you get to work harder sometimes than when you were employed, but there is this joy that comes with the fact that you are the one ordering it, you are the one choosing to do what you do, not just from what is expected of you to do. So that period when you and your sister was actually running the business, what was it like? How were you able to kind of, yeah, get turn out the revenue within 90 days? You were able to get as much as what that gets. What did you do different?
Well, you know what the biggest difference was between what we were doing and then what my dad was doing? Remember, my dad was one guy, right? My sister was helping him in the office. She kind of ended up filling the shoes of my mom. And my dad, this is the same problem everybody has if you're the main solopreneur, right? You have energy to go out and get a job, and then all your focus is put
The
on
job.
doing the job. So you can't be getting your next job while you're doing the job. That's what shifted with Kelly and I because I could constantly be marketing and networking, and she could constantly be project management. And then we had a helper who came in and did our books for us. So I went full speed ahead. Plus, of course, with the car business background, I don't know how much you might know about the automotive industry and especially here in the States, but it's extremely intense. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not for the faint of heart, right? So I had that work hard mentality and I was used to working on commission. So I was just out every day talking and we joined some really key networking groups. And I would say if this is the key for those listening who are like, if you love doing the job, find somebody who loves to do the networking. Maybe it's your wife, maybe it's your teenage daughter, somebody who could be the face of your company. Join networking groups and be intentional, because I would go specifically looking for contractors to partner with, real estate investors to partner with. We would build these relationships. So we were not just building it up to get one job, we were getting it with multiple jobs. And that's
Multiple
how we
jobs.
would stay busy. So that's the trick there.
Wow, wow, amazing. I think this is very, very key, being that a whole lot of businesses start as a solopreneur, just one person, and there's not much one person can do. And the analogy you just give just speak volume, being that sometimes we reach out to get job, and once we get job, we are dead focused on that. Because even me, I'm trying to find balance, being that I run a painting industry, and it's just me alone and a few other guys. So, well, like sometimes I do marketing, so I reach out to some couples of jobs. I'm focusing on single one. And while I'm focusing on that, others have come in handy. I can't handle them. So it's a whole lot. But also, I'm still very curious. What was the marketing style like? Why you actually handled that? And how were you able to kind of, what systems did you build around the marketing? Were you able to reach out a whole lot of stuff and you're able to get a whole lot of jobs handed during that period of 19 days?
Well, here's the thing. Marketing is interesting because especially if you're in a crowded area like a big city, it's different in a small town. I live in a small town now and it's very different. Everything is relationship driven in a small town. But in a bigger town, we were competing with large companies like Home Depot, for example. They're a huge chain that is just offers all the hardware supplies, and then they sell carpet and flooring, and they have crews, okay, that they could do it super cheap because they're big. So they were like one of our biggest competitors and one of our biggest nemesises, to be honest, because we'd often have to fix their work because they were in a hurry.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm saying I didn't waste any time or money marketing with traditional marketing. There wasn't any like from business to consumer marketing. I wasn't putting ads out. I wasn't anything. Everything I did was about building up referral relationships.
Mm.
I wanted to be the person that this contractor called because he knew that I would get in and get that work done and that I would meet the deadline, come heck or high water, right? I was getting it done. In fact, we even had a situation. We were on a job. It was a job that started before dad died. And we were redoing this women's bathroom. Oh my gosh, talk about high end. It was like marble tile. It was just, she was really going over the top on this bathroom. And we were doing everything from the backsplash to the floor to the mud set shower, everything. And I had our guy who was my dad's guy. Okay. And you got to think about the relationship here. My dad just died. This is his guy. He's known my dad for so long. He was slow as molasses though, because he was a bit of a perfectionist. And he's like, this is art. You can't rush art. Meanwhile, the general contractor's breathing down our neck because the customer is like starting to clock watch. She's like, he comes at this time, he leaves at this time, he's not getting the job done. And it was slowing everything down. And I told him, I said, look, we want you to get this job done. We want to keep this relationship going. But if you don't get this project moving, I'm going to have to find somebody else to come in and help because we have to meet this deadline. And he, instead of listening, he just pushed back more. So I said, okay, fine. So I just found somebody else. They came in. I said, you're going to do the shower. These guys are going to get the floor done and the backsplash. And that's how it's going to be. And I mean, it was a very uncomfortable situation. But my point was to say, I was able to go back to that contractor and say, look, thank you for bringing it to my attention. I'm going to get it done. And you got to also remember, too, he was giving us a lot of grace because he knew my dad. So we kind of were like in this tenuous thing, like everybody was watching. Are we going to pull it out? Is this going to be on target? And I wasn't willing to let this guy ruin our reputation. So,
Yeah.
sometimes you got to make hard decisions.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. This is really amazing. Also, a whole lot of small business owners still think our referee system doesn't get to work. And just hearing you make reference of it, that the reason why you're able to kind of turn around the revenue in 19 days was the fact that you rely heavily on our referee system, our contractors, and everything. How did you reach out to them? Did you more like start going to events, reaching out to contractors, or more like start reaching out to referrals who are closely related to customer bases? How were you able to put this? Because this is really a lovely strategy.
Okay, so I imagine there's this organization in Africa, but I'm not sure. It's called BNI, Business Networking International. It's an international organization. So I know they have chapters across the world. I just couldn't tell you exactly what countries they're
Yeah,
in. But so what had done to separate ourselves from like the Home Depots, okay? We wanted to focus on luxury high-end homes because these people obviously had more money and they weren't going to go to Home Depot. Let's face it, they just weren't. So I would specifically target luxury home builders, contractors, remodelers. And also I joined a BNI networking chapter in Scottsdale, Arizona, because at the time I lived in Arizona in the US. And Scottsdale's where it's the money town. Okay. It's the place the rich people live. And I joined that community because I knew those people were from that community. I lived on the other side of Phoenix, but I would drive all the way over there because I knew that was my market. And that's what I did. I was very intentional about going after a very specific subset of customers because I knew they were the people that would appreciate all the little things. Like we took the time to, like on that job, we were working upstairs in her master bath, but we had to walk from the door up the stairs. So we would lay all the plastic down so we weren't messing up her expensive carpet in the rest of her house. And we took extra steps like that. And those people super appreciate that. Whereas you can only do that if you're making luxury money. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That's not something you can do if you're doing a low ticket job. So you want to be specific about your market. That's what I guess I'm saying. And
yeah.
then find people who are already working in that niche and then ask yourself, where are they? What meetups are they going to? Could you start your own? That's another thought. If there isn't one, can you start your own?
Yeah, amazing. Thanks a whole lot for this, Lindsay. I think we'll dive into more on business now. Thank you for the whole lot of insight on local entrepreneurs. Yeah, thank you. So you have spent over 20 years in sales and leadership. What were some early lessons from those years that still guide you today?
Well, I think the biggest one is about systematizing your business. I talked to you about how my dad was, always energetically putting out somewhere, right? And
Yeah,
so things I'm sure fell through the gaps or were constantly weighing on his mind. I remember we actually did get to go on a vacation once. We went to a cruise. It was really fun. And he was so different there. I remember thinking, wow, this is not the man I know. And the minute we got in the car after the airport, back in Phoenix, he was instantly, I mean, it was like a mask came
Sweet.
over him. I was still in playful vacation mode and I said something and he just was, wow. And I remember looking at him and he was talking to himself. When people talk to
Yeah.
themselves, how they're,
Yes. Yes.
you could tell he was already back in work mode. That's the kind of thing that goes on, right? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to sleep at night knowing everything's taken care of? You didn't forget an invoice. You're not feeling like when you're having dinner with your family, you really should be getting this other 5 things done or getting text messages from your clients asking about the project or questions or whatever. So, systematizing your business is the way so that you don't have to hire help as much. You can get a lot more done. And this came in, now, mind you, I feel like sometimes God just works in my life certain ways. Like I did the car business where I started whole departments because I was raising a family at that time. I had to systematize it so that I could go on maternity leave. Okay. So I learned these skills. And then when I moved up here to Idaho, it's up by Canada. We're right at the top of the US. We went from desert to snow, what we did. But when I moved up here, I was doing business consulting and I went into a local contractor, mainly because I was doing a podcast at the time for a log cabin construction company. And I wanted to talk about off-grid living. And this gentleman, his name was Rick. We did our podcast. It was really good. And then he asked me, "What do you do? How did you get into this?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing business consulting. I help businesses streamline their operations." And he's like, "Let's talk more about that." He was running everything himself, just like my dad. Okay. And I listened to him and I looked at him and I said, "You are struggling because you don't have systems. You don't have a system. You can't bring in an outside person." He'd had a lot of turnover in the office space. I said, "They're not going to build the systems for you. They're not thinking, they don't even know how to do that. They're order takers. They're going to click here and do this. But if you don't have the system built, they won't last." Anyway, he had also been in the military. He'd been in the army. And he looked at me and he said, I can't even believe he said this, Aro, I'm telling you, this blew my mind. I was going to pitch him just a consulting package. I was like, 3 to 6 months, I'll organize your business and then I'll train my replacement and off you go. That was my plan. And just before I got to that point, he said, "I want you to be an owner in my company." He offered me a 50% partnership.
Ooh.
And why? Like, not like, thank you, but why? It was really surprising. And he looked at me and he said, "I spent 20 years in the military." He said, "I understand processes." And you're absolutely right. He goes, "You're the first person that's ever come in here and said that." He's like, "Everybody wants to sell me marketing. Nobody's ever said you need systems." And I mean, obviously I thought about it and I prayed about it. I talked to him and we had a lot of investigative period before we just jumped into this idea. But ultimately I did. And in 18 months, we were 50% increase on our revenue within 18 months.
Oh.
We went from him being the main and only installer. He was everything in the company. I quickly took over the operations of the office because that's what I do. That's what I knew. So that was instantly off his plate. We organized communications because he was overwhelmed. He had Facebook Messenger, he had calls, he had text messages. Customers only knew his cell phone number. They were calling him at all hours. I'm like, whoop, that stops. You get a new phone number. This is the work cell. Like, he needed to have breathing room. He was on the verge of quitting, like really just walking away from his business, which is why he felt safe giving me a partnership because it was either that or shut it down. Like he was at that point. So, and then this next hurdle was how to find employees. He had a lot of concerns about finding the right people, especially where we live. It's a small town, like I said. So there's a limited pool of people to pull from. So he's like, they could become our competition because we were kind of the only off-grid electrical company in quite a ways. He said, if we get them in here, we're going to teach them. What if they make a catastrophic mistake? Like, what do we do? And what if I have to go in and fix it? How do I, like, he just couldn't wrap his head around all these things, right? So a lot of what I was doing truly was just coaching him through this process. But as it turned out, we ended up hiring 2 journeyman electricians and an apprentice. Okay, we raised our prices. This is really important. People don't A lot of times people price their services based on what they think they're worth. They don't look at the market. And I remember one of the very first things he said to me was how irritated he was because he was having to be called in to fix work that journeyman electricians did. He said, they're getting paid 100 or 120 an hour. Meanwhile, I'm over here charging $50 an hour and I'm fixing their work. And I went, why are you not charging more? So instantly, and also he wasn't charging for his helper. He was just paying his helper out of his $50. So I said, well, first of all, let's raise your prices. Instantly, we raised it to 80. I mean, we were still below market, but that $30 more an hour was a huge profit increase.
Yeah.
When I told him that, I said, I want to be able to pay a journeyman 35 to 40 an hour, and I want that to be something we get to. He could not fathom that. He's like, well, people won't say yes. They won't say yes.
Yeah.
And so it took us a little bit, but by the time we were done, our labor rate was 120 an hour. It was 140 for his time. Can you believe it? He went from like
Good.
$50 an hour to 140 because he was he was an engineer. His time was worth more. He was the guy putting the whole system together. He didn't need to be the guy installing the system. He needed to be mapping it out. Okay. So that's kind of where it went. And anyway, my point was to say we doubled the revenue. We were able to bring on team. And at some point, his dad actually was ill and passed away. And he said, I've got to go back to West Virginia, which is on the other side of the country, and I've got to take care of my mom. So we had to sell because I mean, I wasn't going to be going and
Yeah.
installing solar. But what's really awesome is because we had those systems, we were able to sell to Will, who was our installer, and his wife, and they could just step right in and take over what we had going. And it was like so smooth. So you build systems, don't just help you, they also help you build your business so it is a sellable asset. You would now have an exit strategy. So just think beyond today.
Wow, amazing. I think the stories you just shared just speak volumes. So almost every question I actually even tend to ask, being that you actually more like came into the business and make reference of structures, and with structure a whole lot of things actually was already in place. I'm just imagining more like how cool that would have been if that system was to be in place. Which simply means every day would have been more like an holiday where you get to see your dad and say, wow, this is very that compared to the fact that there was no structures. Right? It just speaks volumes to what system could actually do, and turning business from just the perspective of our solopreneurs, where there's only one installer, to more like a company where you can easily just sell it, being that now you are not just the only one doing the business. And it's really, really amazing. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So you co-found Biz in a bus solution. What problem were you trying to solve for service-based business?
Okay, so primarily what we do is we help you organize your business. Like
Yeah.
we start with an audit, like a workflow audit, where we talk through your processes. A lot of times, especially people who are good with their hands are not good with computers. Okay. Not always. There's definitely exceptions, but that's just a general thing I've seen.
Yes,
And
yes.
also, they want to be creative. Like your work is creative. It's your output, right? You don't want to have to teach yourself a new skill. So what we do is we help show you where automation can help streamline systems. Like, so for example, one thing we did in the solar business is our bidding process was ridiculous. Like when it would take Rick going out, he would do his site visit, he'd come back, he'd compile a list of notes. Now, mind you, he was an engineer, so he way overthought things, but he would then turn it into like a product list. I would put the bid together. Sometimes it would take us like a week to get a bid out. That was ridiculous. I said, look, we've got to get this down to 24 to 48 hours. Boom. It's got to be fast. Speed wins in this market, especially if it's competitive. I said, look, we got to start having some consistent products that we offer. It can't be custom to everybody's situation. We got to have like similar inverters, similar solar systems, and we would package things together. So then I had a whole thing, a CRM, a customer retention management software solution. And what we did is we started setting it up to where we had packages. Now, there would be some nuanced differences. Not everything was always the same. Like one guy might have 20 solar panels, the next guy might have 10. But I could easily make a switch in there, get that off to the customer. What would happen on the customer side is they would review the contract, sign it digitally. It would instantly open an invoice. I never had to make an invoice. It instantly opened, it took their deposit, and then we could start our process. So think about that. Like it streamlined the operation so that I didn't have to build an estimate and then build an invoice and then follow up with them if they didn't sign it. It automated that whole process.
Wow, wow, amazing. That's really, really lovely. I think it's the fact that the first point where you get to make that a whole lot of handy person afraid of using computer. It just don't mean that was my reality earlier on. Being that I run a cleaning business, and not just cleaning business alone. I run industrial cleaning too. I'm painting, and I think at one point starting a podcast was more of a big deal for me. I was like, my friend was talking to me about it. That yeah, it'd be an opportunity to just more like talk to a whole lot of handy persons who might be afraid to actually use these particular tools, and the fact that yes, it's going to serve more like a class for me to where I get to see things different or from different perspective, what people are doing different to scale their business, build structures around it. And yeah, it just speaks volume. And it was over time and I was now confident in, yeah, holding laptop and doing some things on computer and everything. And they just really speak volumes to it that yes, it can be so overwhelming sometimes, especially when trying to kind of give budget, being able to write invoice and everything. And in the system, you just make reference or just make it easier. And it's what every 100% need to actually adopt. So that at least most times what get them bored, what make them more like stuck at what they are doing. It's the intellectual part of it being that they are using their head to wrap up a whole lot of things that, yeah, pretty small setup could have actually more like those background work so that they could focus
Yeah.
on the handy part of it.
Right, exactly. Because you get into it because of something you're good at something, right?
Yeah.
You're good at painting. And that's what you want to do and you enjoy it. You get to put in your, music and just jam out and paint the walls and it's like it's enjoyable, it's peaceful. It's running the business part that's so annoying to some people, right? That's the part that's like a nuisance and having to talk like all those things. So the more you can automate the things you don't love to do, two things. One, it's like you don't have to hire help, right?
Yeah.
You get to keep more of your profit. And two, you also get to have a lot more peace. And that way, when you're not painting, you can just go be with your family or do something fun.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. So you are a podcaster. Why do you believe podcasting is still relevant today despite the crowded market?
Actually, it's so interesting you asked me that. I just recently did a talk about podcasting and a lot of research on this subject because I was curious myself if podcasting is still relevant. Okay. So get this on Apple, we're going to use statistics from Apple because it's like the number one podcast app
Yeah.
still in the country, in our country. I don't know about the world. I would imagine there's others. There are, I think it was, let me think for a second, 2.6 million podcasts on Apple, but only 430,000 of them are active. Yeah, that's a huge gap. What happened was during COVID, when everybody was home and had nothing to do, first of all, people wanted to make money online. So there was this huge influx of people going online, building podcasts. And also, there was a lot of people who got exposed to listening to podcasts because, again, they were home with nothing to do. But you see statistically, the active podcast slowly declined since everybody's getting back to work.
Yeah.
Life went back to normal a couple years later. That is what's happening. But, okay, meanwhile, listenership is still on the rise. Like as more and more people are getting accustomed to podcasts, what's really cool, this part of it excited me the best. The people who listen to podcasts on a monthly basis in this particular data, I'm remembering it was like 55% of the US claims that they listen to podcasts on a monthly basis.
Ooh.
Of that 55%, like 43% of that, like a high percentage, listen audio only. which surprised me. I thought it would be video.
Really?
Yeah. Now, compound that with the fact that Starlink is getting put all over the world. So
Yeah.
places that didn't have internet is now coming online. You are going
Yeah.
to see what we think is saturated now is not even close. It's about to really blow up. So anybody who has a podcast right now is in a good position. And don't quit. Don't quit it.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Thanks for this. I think this really speaks volume. And to the fact that you even make reference of Starlink is the fact that my network here is not that good, and it's Starlink I'm heavily relying on like this. And yeah, thank you. So
Yeah.
finally, if you have to summarize out the freedom life in one simple principle, what would it be?
Design your business to support the lifestyle you want.
Design.
I think way too many times we go to work because we're trying to make a buck and we let money be our god, I guess you could say. It decides everything for us, you know? Money decides where we work, money decides how often we work, money decides. But when you think to yourself in a quiet space and you think, if I could design my life and what I do for money to fuel me, it changes the whole thing.
Wow, amazing. Thank you, Lindsay. So, Lindsay, I would like you to describe yourself to my audience and what you do and how they could actually connect with you and how they could actually do business with you and what platform is best to do that.
Well, I'm going to give you two ways you can work with me because I have multiple skill sets. Okay. One is streamlining your business. If that's something that you're struggling with, let's just jump on a call and see how we can support you. We can help you map it out and all that fun stuff. The second piece, though, which is what I'm really starting to get more focused on, is helping service providers launch a digital leg of their business. So you're a
Mm,
painter, example. What if you were to start a software company for painters that helped them automate their business process?
mm,
So I help you, I teach you how to do this, how to build your business. Then you've got a revenue stream that we call an MRR, monthly reoccurring revenue. So guess what happens then? You get to be picky about the painting jobs you pick. They want you to climb on a
yeah,
50-foot ladder. Not today. You know,
yeah,
it makes it nice because you totally have more freedom to say yes
yeah.
to when you want and no when you want. So anyway, that's the other piece, and that's really kind of what I'm getting into, especially as I'm starting to see even more. This is what's really important with AI. Building a personal brand online is going to get really, really hard in the next 12 months. Already, we see video coming out that is so realistic, and it's like me, Lindsay. I don't have to show my face on the camera. I can have a virtual avatar that looks like a spitting image of me. I could
Yeah.
just write the code and it makes the videos. So when you think about that, and I know another software that makes faceless videos and publishes it for you, you could have bots doing this. If you think about now how saturated our industry is with online marketing, it is only going to get more in 12 months. And here's the other piece of this coin. People are going to start to doubt what they see. They're going to just assume, oh, that's not it. It's not real. Even if it is, you could be there saying, this is me, Lindsay, for real. And they're going to, I don't think so, and it's going to diminish trust. Trust is what builds relationships.
Mm,
Trust is what makes people want to buy from you. If you want to build a digital leg of your business, we've got to get started now because this is your chance to really dig in and truly shine in
mm.
authenticity anyway.
Wow, amazing, amazing. So how can my audience reach out to you? And where's the platform to reach out to you for this business deal and if they actually want to
Yeah.
consult you for the both of them?
Okay. So our website is bizinaboxsolutions with an s.com. And there's a way to set up a call with me. That'd be the best way to go.
It's amazing. Yeah, Lindsay, thank you for sharing your journey, insight and powerful message of building a business that truly supports the life you want. To everyone listening, you can learn more about her and her work at bizinaboxsolution.com. Thank you for joining the Aro Benaiah Show, and it's really, really a pleasure having you on the show, Lindsay. Yeah, thank you so much for the load of insight.
My pleasure. Have a great one.